This podcast is sponsored by Talkspace.
Last year, I went through many different life changes. I needed to take a pause and examine how I was feeling in the inside to better show up for the ones who need me to be my best version of myself.
When you're navigating life's changes, Talkspace can help. Talkspace is the #1 rated online therapy, bringing you professional support from licensed therapists and psychiatry providers that you can access anytime, anywhere.
Living a busy life, navigating a long-distance relationship, becoming a first-step father, Talkspace made all of those journeys possible. I could speak with my therapist in the office. I could speak with my therapist in the comfort of my home. I was never alone.
Talkspace works with most major insurers, and most insured members have a $0 copay. No insurance, no problem. Now get $80 off your first month with promo code SPACE80 when you go to Talkspace.com. Match with a licensed therapist today at Talkspace.com. Save $80 with code SPACE80 at Talkspace.com.
Welcome back to the Ballet Help Desk podcast. My name's Jenny, and I'm joined by my co-founder, Brett. Today, we are honored to be joined by two folks from Ballet West. First up is Adam Sklute. Adam began his ballet training in Oakland, California, and was with the Joffrey Ballet for 23 years, starting in New York as a dancer, where he was one of the last two artists personally chosen by Robert Joffrey for his company. He became ballet master in 1995 and was part of the team that moved the company from New York to Chicago. In 2004, he became associate artistic director of the Joffrey Ballet. Sklute has extensive television and film credits and is an adjunct professor at the University of Utah, as well as a teacher, lecturer, coach, and judge for ballet schools, competitions, and companies worldwide. Sklute was listed as one of the 25 movers and shakers of Utah art scene in 2007. In 2014, he was named Utah's Enlightened 50. He received the Utah National Guard Bronze Minuteman Award for outstanding service to Utah and the nation. Sklute was awarded Utah's Diversity Connection Business Award for outstanding commitment to diversity initiative and Westminster College MLK Unsung Hero Award for his ongoing work to promote inclusivity and diversity in ballet and in the community. Most recently, Sklute was included in Desert Magazine's 25 Changemakers of the West for his efforts to build greater equity and inclusion in classical ballet. In 2016, Sklute took on dual position of CEO and artistic director of Ballet West for the year. Also joining us is Evelyn Cisneros-Legate. Evelyn was a prima ballerina of San Francisco Ballet for many years, beginning under Lou Christensen, the brother of Ballet West founder William Christensen, and continued under artistic director Helgi Thomason. Miss Cisneros-Legate holds an honorary doctorate from both Mills College and the University of California at Monterey Bay. Considered to be one of America's leading ballerinas and the first Mexican-American principal ballerina. She is a renowned dance educator who has taught at some of the most prestigious dance schools in the world. A former principal of the Boston Ballet School, she is a sought-after adjudicator and speaker. So, without further ado, the Help Desk is now open. Brett and I created Ballet Help Desk as the resource we wish we had when our kids were going through ballet training. Now we've got some exciting news. For a while, many of you have asked for an ad-free option, and we've been listening. We are thrilled to introduce the Ballet Help Desk Backstage Pass on Patreon. With your subscription, you'll get every episode ad-free. The full back catalog, remastered with higher quality audio, and early access to the episodes before they are released publicly. As our Patreon community grows, we'll be adding new ways for you to connect more deeply with the podcast and the Ballet Help Desk community. Subscribe today. See you backstage.
Adam and Evelyn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
So let's dive right in. Let's talk Ballet West Academy. Can you give us just a quick overview of how it's structured, particularly as students move into your full-time training program?
Sure. We start training students at ages 3. They have to be out of diapers. And then we just train them from ages 3 all the way up to age 20. We have classes and specific curriculum that we wrote for the ages, for the physical development in cognitive and behavior and emotional development of children. So there's no frustration in the child or in the instructor giving the information from age 3 all the way up. So we provide classes in ballet and then complementary classes like character and contemporary, and we do stretching and conditioning and things that will support the classical ballet technique. So we have 8 levels through the school. We have 3 levels of beginner, 3 levels of elementary, and then we have 8 levels in the academy. And then students are selected by audition into our professional training division. And we have 3 levels of women in that, and we have 2 levels of men. And then the next level would be as a trainee, which Adam selects from the academy, from the dance world. And then that can progress into Ballet West 2, and then eventually into the company.
And I should add about the trainee, as you're saying, specifically as it pertains to the trainee program. That was a program that I actually started for our academy about 16 years ago. So I want to say approximately 2010. And while Ballet West, when I arrived here in 2007, had a second company, Ballet West 2, a lot of their work, they do their own touring as well as dance in most productions with the company, the large-scale productions, and do a lot of the education and outreach. But one of the things that I was charged with when I arrived as artistic director in 2007 was to really build the strength and scope of the Ballet West Academy. And one of the things that I felt as the artistic director of the overall organization I could do the best was by creating a very strong pipeline from the academy into the company. To move into Ballet West 2 from one of the professional training divisions, even the top one, there were a lot of sort of disparate elements there. And so I felt like by creating a trainee program that presented the top level, sort of the most professionally bound level of the Ballet West Academy, this would give not only me a clear group of individuals that I could see how their development was over a year or two to really see if they would be ready for Ballet West, but also for all of us working together to be able to see who was really ready for us to help move into a professional career somewhere. So it really became sort of the top tier of the academy. I select all of the trainees exclusively, although of course I do it with plenty of input from Evelyn and her principal faculty because they work with these students so often. And then the trainees not only get their own repertoire, which they do a lot of very specific repertoire from big Balanchine ballets to story ballets. They also perform in the company productions and act as emergency understudies for all the company. And when they go in, they actually get paid a full week's Ballet West 2 stipend if they go into a company production. Yeah. So while it isn't a paid position, it is paid if they go into a company production. And what's been wonderful now is that I would say 75% of Ballet West 2 have come out of our trainee program. And at this point, almost 60% of the company has come out of our trainee program, including one principal and 2 of our soloists. So it certainly is working.
That's amazing. How many people are in your trainee program? And is it a 1-year or a 2-year program?
Well, at the moment, we have probably it's in flux right now because we start in the fall. The top level would be 30. Bottom being about 25, and that it gives Adam the flexibility to be able to use them in different company productions and in our family series as well. So basically that's what we work with.
And it's a 2-year program, but again, both with the size of the group as well as the length of time, that's more of a, how should we say, sort of guidelines than it is a hard and fast rule.
Right.
I've had trainees who may be very ready when they come into the trainee program, and I may not have a place in second company for them yet. And I urge them to come to the trainee program, work, learn our style, learn how we work here. And sometimes within 6 months, a trainee might get into Ballet West 2. We have other times when we might have a trainee who has had a rather serious injury and might be out for a full year. And we say, why don't you stay for a third year? Because you really haven't had a chance to dance.
Right.
So that's where we keep a degree of flexibility. But generally speaking, it is a 2-year program. First year, really getting to learn the ropes and do it. Second year, really working on refining it and getting yourself ready for a professional job, hopefully with Ballet West too. But if not, we'll work hard to help get them a job anywhere.
Okay, so you said that there were some disparate elements that you were seeing lacking in the students trying to make that transition from the school into Ballet West 2. What were those? And
Okay, I'm going to jump in because I want to clarify something. Disparate elements did not mean I saw something lacking.
Okay.
What it was that I have a very specific style. Not all artistic directors do. Some have even more specific style than I do. We have a brilliant faculty, but they have a broad spectrum of knowledge and approaches. I want that because that develops a degree of versatility in our artists. But with the trainee program, if they're coming from some of our top level schools or from schools around that they haven't come from the ground up, this gives them an opportunity to really work to hone the uniqueness of Ballet West's approach and Ballet West's style and create themselves as a team in that way.
And that's something that Adam will talk to us. We see each other often, and we'll talk about specific trainees and thinking, oh, well, this trainee needs a little bit more work in their point work. They need to use the ends of the shoes. We'll maybe try and get them into a different shoe and then work on that so that we can improve that to the point where it's what Adam had envisioned.
Yeah, no detail is too small when we're talking about it, as Evelyn's mentioned, from the type of shoes that we think might make them look the best and make them feel the best when they're dancing to mental health issues, if some of them are dealing with them. And I'm seeing something that's not quite right in a student. And, Evelyn and I will talk about it and understand what's going on. And, all these type of things are vital to us because we're really interested in their development as people as well as their development as dancers.
And I think that's very unique too within the Ballet West community. Is it's really important that, to me, that in our academy that the students are raised as all round humans, that they learn all they need to learn. They learn all the skills that will make them successful in any field.
Sure. Okay, but hold on. So if you're saying that you have a vast faculty, they've got a breadth of knowledge. What's the difference between your level 8 and your trainee level in terms of is it exposure to you, Adam? Is it that you teach more? How do you then take that breadth and then hone it into someone who is able to dance the Ballet West style? I guess I'm looking for what is that fine tuning that you're doing in that level that makes it differentiate from just your top level
Well, there are
school?
two questions, and I would like to ask Evelyn if she would answer. It sounds like the first question that you're really asking is sort of what is the difference between level 8 and the trainee? And actually,
Sure.
I think Evelyn can talk about that because we kind of have a couple of tracks that's really been developed very wisely by Evelyn in the way that she's put it together. But you want to talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Adam. So we try to make the student successful in whichever pattern they go into. So we have students that we don't feel are strong enough, that their technique isn't strong enough to be able to handle the excessive hours that our professional training division has. And so they need more training. They need more specific training. They need to get the strength. And, the aesthetic of a dancer is very specific. And, there comes when you're trying to train a professional dancer that it's defined a little differently.
We'd like to think we're creating a home also. I mean, this is what Evelyn has done here for students who may be taking it for avocational reasons, for whatever, to help their cheerleading, to help their theater performances, just because they love it. And we want to be able to create a space for them in that capacity too, as opposed to the rigors and stricter approach of the professional training division.
So can I ask you a question about that? So that's an interesting point because we're seeing a lot of schools that have done this, that have created these dual tracks. Are you saying that you have a training track that kids can stay in all the way through when they graduate high school that is not in the professional training division?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And we have taken students that have trained with us and maybe they started dancing late, but they weren't strong enough to go into the professional training division. But we watch them and, we have exam work every year for all the levels, level 3 and up. And so after their exams, we have a whole panel that sees them and we'll see a student. A couple years ago, I saw a student there and I thought, this girl's worked so hard and she's gotten really good and she's going to age out in a year. Let's give her an opportunity to do the professional training division. And she came in and she did it for a year and she improved so much. She went out and got herself a job, and it was wonderful because we were able to really support her through that and then see her success.
But to the second part of your question, Jenny, about the uniqueness of the trainee program, yes, they have exposure to me. I teach the training program. I endeavor to teach the trainee program every other week. That is happens most, it is aspirational. It happens more often than not, but it doesn't always, just unfortunately, because I'm pulled in a million different directions. But also, as well, they actually train once a week with our second company students, separately, men and women. Ballet is a very binary art form. I mean, although there are places for those differences, and we celebrate that as well. The truth is, obviously, this is the nature of our art form. So we will put the director of Ballet West 2 will often teach the trainee men and Ballet West 2 men together. And our principal rehearsal director for the company will often teach point work for our trainee women and Ballet West 2 women together once a week, too. So, with that, they start to work more closely, not only with the artistic staff, but also with the other professionals and pre professionals. And so, that is actually what makes the trainee program itself more unique than just a level 8 class, which is, wonderful classes for them to continue to build and grow and show some results if they actually are able to get to that place. But no matter what, we want them to have a good dancing experience.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And now a brief pause to hear a word from our sponsors. While you're back to school shopping, picking up backpacks and new ballet flats, don't forget to pick up our corrections journal. If your dancer is looking to put their right foot forward this year, think about picking up one of our corrections journal. It was made by dancers for dancers. Lots of space to write, lots of space to write corrections, set intention, and set bigger and smaller goals to help your dancer move forward and have the best year yet. So head on over to our website and find out all our details and check out all of our cute covers. There's something for everyone. So buy yours today. And back to the episode.
The trainee program has now been around for quite a while, correct? I think did you say 2007?
No, I started at 2007. I started the trainee program in approximately 2010 or 11.
Got it. Okay. And then when was Ballet West 2 started?
So Ballet West 2 was started a few years before I arrived. I want to say 2 to 4 years before I arrived. Interestingly, Ballet West 2 was started primarily as the group that would do the organization's education and outreach work. We happen to also have one of the largest education and outreach for ballet in the world. Certainly, we have the largest one in the United States. We reach over 150,000 students and adults around the Intermountain region every year on a rotating basis. In the early days of these programs, which really started coming forward in the 1980s, the late 1980s, the company themselves would spend weeks of their work doing this education outreach. And that was ultimately not a functional situation. And especially not long before I arrived, the company also joined a dancers union, AGMA, and it became harder to sustain that way. So Ballet West 2 was developed particularly to do that kind of work. What happened was that Ballet West 2 also ended up becoming in demand for doing a lot of small tours around the Intermountain region that the company couldn't do, that we were too large to do. And then on top of it, when we would do the really big ballets, the big story ballets, the Swan Lakes, the Sleeping Beauties, or Balanchine's Jewels, massive casts, they would augment the core and perform in them. And so that's how it sort of morphed. And now Ballet West 2 and trainees get an opportunity to perform these education and outreach programs where they go into the schools and do dances. And the trainees get paid when they do that as well as if they go into the company productions.
So basically, every time the trainees are performing on behalf of Ballet West, sounds like they're getting paid?
Correct. If they're doing academy performances, they don't.
Yeah,
But yeah.
right,
Right.
exactly.
Right, but
So
the
every year
outreach
we do
stuff.
have
The outreach stuff or in a company production where they're not just, I don't know, holding a spear or, standing on the side dressing the stage. When they're actually dancing in a company production, they will get paid. And when they're actually doing the outreach stuff, they will get paid.
It's really great. You had a vision for when you started Ballet West's trainee program. How has that morphed into what it is today, and how close is it to what you originally envisioned?
Okay, well, starting with the second company, I had a long history with second companies. I'm a product of Robert Joffrey. I come from the Joffrey Ballet. And actually, the Joffrey Ballet was the first company in the world to start a formalized second company, Joffrey 2, back in the 1970s. I wasn't in it back then, but not too long after them. So I understood how a second company worked. The trainees, it was really, again, as I described it, how I wanted it, as it's how it's morphed and grown. They've actually, in many ways, become close to being their own company. And I have to say that's really, since Evelyn has come on board over these years, because because their caliber, their quality, their whole approach is such that they really, I mean, when we bring in choreographers, Evelyn will commission a choreographer, or I'll ask someone to come in and stage something like that. They're saying this is like its own little company, which it is. So and so that's really been the growth point there.
Thank you. Yeah. So we just, demand excellence from them and push them and want them to continue to grow and get stronger technically and not be complacent about it, because as you had mentioned too, there are fewer of them. And so they have to be more extraordinary to get those. And, our trainees are just lovely.
This is sort of probably annexing another question that you might end up asking, but it kind of just came up because I was thinking about this, about one of the things that I've often heard in terms of complaint or concern, I should say more than complaint in general, of trainee groups is that we're looking at just creating cheap labor or getting cheap labor out of people. And that was never the intent, and it's still not the intent. And in fact, it is very much, in my opinion, a developmental program. They have their own unique director, who reports jointly to Evelyn and I and me, and she is very much a mentor and guide for them. They have access to companies' nutritionists, to the company's mental health supports therapists, all of these things. And so, and they're learning as they're going along. So it's so much more than that. And I hope they're also seeing that I now see so many who've in professional companies around the country, because obviously we only have so much space that I'll have room. We really work between Evelyn, myself, other faculty members. We work really, really hard to get these kids jobs. That is paramount. I don't know if I realized how challenging that part of it would be when I started the program, but I guess it's just my own personal commitment to their success that I could not, if I didn't feel like I had a place for them or it wasn't the right fit for them here, I want them to have something. So it does take up an enormous amount of time, but it is a very big part of what our commitment is to those students. And in that respect, it couldn't be further from the idea of just getting, inexpensive or free dancing on the stage. Because we pay them if they're actually doing company work.
Right. So that being said, what should a student who's coming into your trainee program be looking to get out of it? Like I've heard you say over and over again in our conversation so far, is they're a student. They're not a professional, right? Like it's not like they're signing a professional contract. But if students are considering the trainee program at Ballet West, what are some of the things they should be looking to get out of it in their experience there?
Do you want to talk them through what they do, the training?
So they're coming in as a trainee. So what does the name in itself signifies that they are here, they're a dancer in training, and they're a dancer in training in every way. The expectations we have of them, how they represent Ballet West out in the greater community, how they represent Ballet West when they do get an opportunity to go into company rehearsals, how they dress, how they act, how they are on time all the time, their attention to detail, their attention to who's ever the leader in the room. All of those elements are things that we really expect of them and lay out those expectations right up front. And if they don't come up to it, then we'll have conversations with them about that, because that's their role. They're going to come out of the trainee program ready to take a job, because they understand if they're scheduled fifth cast to learn a ballet, they better know that ballet. They better know the counts. They better know the musicality of it. They better know where the spacing is, and all of those little details. They're responsible for all of those things, and we try to hold them accountable for that while they're in the training.
They also have repertoire created on them. I mean, that is a unique part of the experience, which is vital for dancers, learning how to work with choreographers and learning how to be created on and really understand their own creativity within that process. It is a very rigorous position. In fact, I would say in some ways it is perhaps the most challenging. The two places I think are the most challenging in our entire ranks are the trainees and our demi-soloists. Our demi-soloists, because they're still mostly corps de ballet, but they have to go into soloists and sometimes principal roles on time to time. So, but it's very rigorous, but they learn so much. One of the things that is always lovely, because I meet with them once or twice a year, all of the trainees as well, along with Evelyn and Christy, our trainee manager. They often say one of the most inspiring things is to be in the studio, watching the company dance, watching the principals, learning how they approach their work and being able to take that into and absorb that for their own. They will be expected to learn very quickly. That is part of the development and how I can gauge whether they're going to be ready. And I won't deny, a little bit more pressure on the second year trainees than the first year trainees, because the expectation is higher. They've spent a year through the program and they understand what they're being looked at for. And in fact, the second year trainees are often the ones that are picked first for understudying the company roles. And it has happened where someone has been thrown in last minute and gone in and done a brilliant job. And the next thing they knew, they got a contract. It has also happened where someone has been thrown into a part that they've actually understudied, did not know their part well enough, and we put someone else into the part. And then they hopefully have learned from as well. So it is, but there's also, I think, a very, very much a family-oriented concept to it. I feel like they get very close as a group and as a team, and that's also learning to work as a company and as an ensemble.
So, what is the fundamental difference or differences between the higher of the two trainee levels and Ballet West 2?
Ballet West 2 really does spend more time with the company and doing its own repertoire and touring when it's not doing the company repertoire and touring. The trainees still have technique classes often. Ballet West 2 will be more in rehearsal and performances at a level than the trainees are. So, because trainees are still expected to take their technique classes if they're not in rehearsals where they're on point for 3/4 of the day, because we generally they do their technique classes and their own repertoire work in the first half of the day. And because we try to do the big corps de ballet rehearsals in the second half of the day, that's when they'll go to the company rehearsals with that. But if they're on point all afternoon, Evelyn might make a decision where they won't be doing so much point work in the morning. But otherwise, they're expected to continue to take their point classes because they're still very much students.
They're still learning. They have pas classes, they have point classes, they have repertory classes in addition to their hour-and-a-half technique class every morning.
So it's still much more of an educational thing. Yeah.
Sure. So may I just kind of pull apart to your trainees? How often do they actually get on stage as opposed to being an understudy, right? Because, there's this big kind of debate out there about, I would argue that learning how to be an understudy is a really important thing, but a lot of parents and kids are complaining about the fact that they have a technique class and then they stand in the back of rehearsal for 5 hours. So in your particular program, how often are those trainees dancing? And I know it depends based on the kid and the year and
Right.
the blah, 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 blah. I get all
Yeah,
of
but
that.
I think we also and I'll let Evelyn talk a little bit. These trainees actually have some of the most intense performing schedule, I think, of any students I know, because what we don't want to forget is that they have their own repertoire that they do with the academy as well. Every year they'll do, as we look
A
at it,
fall.
a fall program. What do you have? You have a fall program that's exclusive for the trainees. In January, you often have like those black box shows and stuff, trainees and PTDs.
We do. We also have an opportunity at the beginning of the year in September, like right out of the gate, where we participate in the Dance for Life gala that happens here in Salt Lake every year. And they usually perform a choreographed work that's just been choreographed on them, and then they have their own particular performance in this year. It's in October, where it's just all about the trainees, and they'll do a classical piece and they'll do a contemporary piece and have an opportunity to really wrap around that. In addition to that, Nutcracker starts and they're all in Nutcracker. And then there's a fall series as well when they're in Dracula and they're all understudying
What they're doing is
get
their
on
own
stage.
repertoire in early October, but they're also still learning because we always start with a big full length in late October. So that's when they'll go into the understudy position, or they'll be on stage. In Nutcracker, they're all performing in Nutcracker in some capacity or not. Whether they're in company roles or not, that will depend. Now, in Nutcracker, they end up going into company roles a lot because there's always a slew of, injuries and illnesses and things like that. But they're also, because there are so many of what we have student roles involved, they'll be doing that. We have different categories that we work out with AGMA. This spring, for instance, we're doing Balanchine Symphony in C, which is a massive ballet. And in fact, they've allowed us to create two of the corps de ballets as student roles. AGMA's agreed that because one, there's a core of 38, I think, or something like that total. So, I mean, even, we could only have so much company for that. So two of those corps de ballet sections are for students alone, and that will be trainees in that one. And that gives them an opportunity to really perform. They're performing a lot. They are performing a lot. Now, again, when they're performing academy productions, they don't get paid. But when they are performing in company roles, they get paid. Or they're 4 to 6 weeks of education and outreach work out of the year too, where they go out in teams of about 6 to go into the schools. They get paid for that as well. So there's a lot of performance opportunity and that's why I say it's so rigorous, because they are doing these rehearsals that they're dancing in, rehearsals that they're understudying, and classes as well.
And we haven't mentioned the family series.
Yes, the Family
So then they're
Classic
doing the
series too,
family
which is
classic series as well.
where they actually get to perform principal and soloist roles on the main stage as well. So yeah,
Hey, I mean, that is quite a bit of performing.
it's a
Yeah,
ton of
it is.
performing.
Oh, and then in our spring, in the Academy show in the spring, we always have the trainees participate. They don't participate in our winter because they're busy. But in the spring, they do participate and almost always present a balancing ballet. And this year we're doing, Western Symphony.
Last year we did Square Dance,
and we did Allegro Brilliant. And we've
yeah,
done,
all of them. And those are for
Symphony
exclusively for the trainees.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
that's
so,
interesting.
yeah.
Do you mostly do like a balancing work? Is that because I just heard like 3 balancing works in a row? So
Well, that's
is that
at least once a year. Yeah, the nature of our company is built on a very broad scope from all of the different directors, but our founder, Willem Christensen, had very deep ties to George Balanchine. And so I would say that the works of Balanchine, as well as the big classics, are really the backbone of the company. But we have a very broad and eclectic repertoire. And that's what they're trained in. I mean, we do a great deal of Killian, Forsyth, even, all of these others now, Wielden, Rotmansky, they're all parts of our things.
And now, time for a quick ad break. We are now welcoming reviews of year-round ballet school programs on Ballet Help Desk, whether it's a full-time program, after school, a conservatory, or a company-affiliated school. We welcome all of them. If your dancer has been part of a program, please consider sharing your experience. Imagine there is a family out there right now trying to make an important decision, and your insight could help them feel more confident about their next step. Reviews are completely anonymous, and it takes just a few minutes to complete. And let everyone learn all about the good, the bad, and everything in between. Now, back to the episode. So, I think we want to shift just a tiny bit for this portion of the interview and kind of talk to you guys as thought leaders and as industry leaders in terms of thinking about the industry as a whole. And we know that there is this huge increase in postgraduate programs. Why do you think this is happening overall for the ballet industry?
So I'll speak about that
Please.
first. I just believe that through the years, artistic directors have come to really value the older, more grown up human more. They're more stable, they're more reliable, they're, less dramatic and emotionally fragile. Most artistic directors now are looking for older dancers. So, back when I danced back in the dark ages, if you were kind of affiliated with a company in your teens, you'd be too old. But now that is not the case. People really want dancers that are thoughtful, they're respectful, they're able to commit, they know how to live on their own away from their families without being emotionally unstable. And I think that is probably the bottom line about why this post grad formula is working so beautifully now. And I think that for the directors, it makes it a lot more stable. You bring somebody that's a young adult, but they're an adult, not a kid, into the company atmosphere. And I think they probably fit a lot better.
I mean, teamwork is so important to me, and our entire company, I feel, has to function at a level of maturity that I don't place real high priority on age one way or the other. Perhaps more when I'm looking at developmental concepts, like if someone is of a certain age, will they be able to grow to this place or not? But again, even that is so individual. But to Evelyn's point, generally speaking, slightly older dancers of a post grad age have a degree of maturity. They've gone through a lot of the puberty, all of these other things that are so challenging about their teenage years, and have been able to deal with things. I think it may have, and this is speculation on my part, there are a couple of things that I wonder. I often wonder if post COVID, we've often talked about this, about how a whole sort of generation of kids was lost just because at an age where most kids were what, between 13 and 16, vital training ages for young students. They didn't have that opportunity in so many different places. We never closed down, but of course we had to minimize in our own way as well, just like the rest of the world did. So, with that in mind, a lot of these kids are now older. And so I know certainly as an international competition judge, not long after COVID, they extended the age limits for different competing groups because we were seeing older students who were competing or wanting to compete because they had not yet gotten jobs in a way that pre-COVID. But again, there's a degree of speculation in that because we don't have solid facts on any of that. And then, I think also we look current, our whole approach to mental health in the world has changed so dramatically over the last decade that I do think that it's really about trying to give enough time for teenagers and young students to be able to build that resilience that and because it's a very demanding job, no matter how kind we try to be and no matter how fair we wish to be, and always feel like we're approaching it in the fairest and best way, that you cannot deny that there is pressure, there's competition, there are challenges. And I think that we're finding more and more that what slightly older students are better equipped to manage that.
Are you really seeing that your incoming core and, because those people, you've been doing these now for 16 years. So now those people who were originally in your trainee levels when you kind of first created it are now probably either moved out of the company or like in your top ranks. Are you seeing a shift in how they were mentally able to handle the rigor of the work, being older, coming in?
What I am seeing is that at the trainee level, we have managed more with mental health issues in the last several years than I have been used to in the past. And I mean, I think that's the best I can tell you at that moment in terms of statistics, because I'm not clear on some of the others, if that makes sense.
I was more thinking anecdotally,
No,
honestly.
I get what you're asking. I just don't really have a clearer answer than that.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. I mean, this is kind of the big experiment, right? I mean, because ballet has created this to itself, on itself.
And there are going to be those young teenagers who are amazingly self-possessed and amazingly together and technically proficient and ready to go on into those kind of things. And then there are going to be others who, at the age of 24, are going to be able to become as strong and as good as an 18-year-old to get in brand new into a company. So again, I don't try and create a hard and fast rule to that from my perspective.
Right.
I mean, I know we have some age limits in the academy levels, but that's only because it's very hard to have a 24-year-old studying with a 16-year-old.
Yeah, we can't mix the adult. Once they're 20, then, it's like you're in your last year training with us and it's time for you to, fly out of the nest and do well.
So, you were talking about the mental health part of it. And the other thing I want to ask you about is communication skills. Because Jenny and I have been kind of kicking this around for a while. We each have a kid who's a professional dancer, and then we each have like a regular kid, right? Who went to public high school, went to college, and then went off and got jobs. And one of the things that you learn being like just a kid in high school is how to communicate with adults, how to sit down with a teacher and discuss something in a constructive way, how to advocate for yourself, all of those things. Then you've got all these ballet dancers that start doing online school freshman, sophomore year of high school, and they don't learn those skills in any sort of a low risk environment. Couple that with being at high pressure ballet training programs where everybody, regardless of what people say, they're nervous, right? They want to make sure that they're doing everything they can to preserve their spot. And so they never learn how to have those conversations with an artistic director or with a teacher about anything, like things they need to work on, what their fate might be with the school. And it's sort of like, well, if I don't address it, I don't have to hear good news or bad news. How are you guys seeing that with students coming into your trainee program who may have not had any kind of experience having those kinds of conversations?
Well, I think that's a wonderful question. And I think it does paint the picture of what we deal with emotionally with our youth today. And I think a lot of that is because they were COVID driven and how they were affected by that whole period of time. We do it with our students in the professional training division as well as the trainees. They do sit down and have a one-on-one with the leader of that program. I have a specific teacher for the PTD ones, the PTD twos, the PTD threes, and the men. And they do sit down with that person, that adult, as a mentor. And they talk about what their goals are, what their fears are, where their weaknesses are, what they need to work on. And then it's followed up throughout the year. Because I think it's really, really important. Just as you say, our youth is not used to sitting down and focusing eye contact with another human being and talking to them sincerely about what's going on with them. I think also
Right.
some of them have had bad experiences. Some of them have had old school ballet teachers that, are just like crack the whip and don't talk back to me. I don't want to hear what you're thinking or doing. Just do it. Or if they come and say, I'm sorry, my foot hurts. Oh, okay, then you're replaced. You're out. Let's put
Right.
someone else in. And of course, as
Yeah.
dancers, that's all you want to do. You want to dance. You want to be able to dance 100% all the time. Is that the reality of it? Not usually. But, and learning to deal with that and learning to trust the person in the room that they also want your success. And we struggle with that all the time at all the levels. But I try really hard with the PTD program that they have their mentor, they have the adult they can talk to, sit down and share their goals, share their fears, share their weaknesses and their strengths. And then we want to guide them in that direction and address all of those things and support them through it, and that's a
Yeah.
conversation that is just ongoing and trying to help them make good decisions by, having a physical therapist there that can talk to them about how it's feeling and what they should do each and every day. And I mean, I had a conversation with a trainee this morning and just saying, okay, you're hurting. Does that mean you can't do the show? No, I don't think so. I think you can find a way through it. And you have a choreographer that wants to work with you and make it work for you. Go with that. Go with that and do that because truth is, in a professional career, there are many times when you're not feeling 100%, but you still have to do the show. You still have to, because you want to, because that's what you want to do. And you're not really at risk of hurting worse. So, yeah, those kinds of conversations we do have with them ongoing. And I think at the end of the day, whether they go on to be in the company or whether they go to a different company or whether they go on to go back to college and find another career, they are more confident and empowered and they are more equipped to communicate better.
Is your mentoring program formal where they meet with somebody regularly?
They meet with their instructor, their main teacher. Yeah, they meet at the beginning of the year, then they check in around Christmas time, and then they check in again in early. So around Christmas time, it's like that's audition period. Should you be preparing your audition video to send out? Are you looking in colleges? Where are you? And so, yeah, they'll meet at the beginning, when the year first starts, they'll meet around winter again, and then they'll meet in spring. And then we also have, as I said, we have exams that the students have to go through. And then through those exams, they get an evaluation, they get another discussion with their mentor.
I was going to say though, a few, just actually 3 points. One is that we do also always the trainees and students are also have access to our sports therapist as well. And it's ultimately about learning how to be able to advocate for yourself. One of the simple things that I did on my end always was this attempt to try and make myself as approachable as possible, which isn't easy because I can walk down the hallway and it's like Darth Vader is coming down the hall. I get it. I understand it. What
Oh my
can I
God, it's so funny, Adam. Patrick Armand was our kid's artistic director. And if you
Yeah,
walked
we know
by
Patrick.
him and you did not say good morning, he would stop you and he would say, look at me. What do you say? Good morning. Good morning, Patrick. Or good morning.
Yeah.
I mean, my daughter always called him Mr. Armand. Good morning, Mr. Armand. But he like made a point of making them do it because he
Yeah.
was like,
It's good.
Yeah.
I'm not the enemy here. Look
No,
at
exactly.
me and
We're
say
here for
good
your success
morning.
and we're here to help you and we're here to be for you. But it is, it is just the nature of the positions I
is.
get.
Sure.
But
It's like, oh my gosh, he looked at me. Oh my gosh.
exactly. But, I belong to International Artistic Directors group called Positioning Ballet, and we meet quarterly on Zoom, but once a year in a different country. This last year, we were just a few months ago in Helsinki, and it was all about school directors along with company directors. And so we had us all talking. And it's interesting because another thing that we're trying to do to get people to start learning how to be people, a little bit dancers, is we're creating a sort of more standardized video audition type situation. We found that a lot of students, they're brilliant now about going on the computer and AIing the company they're auditioning for and writing a cover letter this long that talks about their knowledge of the history of the company and why they want to be in the company. They really actually don't know anything about that company because they've just AI'd the whole thing. And so, and we say we rarely can read that long cover letter anyway. So let's try and get rid of that and create a simple standard where for a minute at most, even they're on the video first saying, hello, my name is so and so. I'm from such and such, and I am really interested in this and that about either your company or in becoming a dancer in general. And then standardizing the exercises or the variations that are shown so that it's about a length and that we all kind of get the same thing so that you don't have one kid who's showing 4 hours of material and another kid who only has access to doing one or two combinations in the studio, and one who's going to be writing very, very well and one who's going to fake write it very well. They're required to actually see your face and say a word or two and be a human being, because I know I, at least as an artistic director, want to see the human being, and understand who they are as people.
I think this is really interesting that you're talking about that. I mean, we've spoken to a few people about the positioning ballet, and we're like, could you please tell us what you guys talk about? Because we're so fascinated.
Well, we do have cat house rules, so I can't tell you
That's
much
what
more than
everyone
that.
tells me. They're like,
But that's a general thing that we are
yeah.
that I know I'm at liberty to discuss.
Yes. Of course, we 100% respect that. We're more just like, we're just so interested to kind of see what you talk about because the world is so small, but you guys are so siloed, right? I mean, you at Ballet West
And that's what
you're
we're
just,
trying so hard to eliminate. You're absolutely right. And I feel like that, to me, that's always been a big thing of trying to get rid of, is that sort of siloed quality. And even here at our organization, I mean, a lot of places they had the school and then the company and then the administration and then this was that. And we would never mix, but we're trying to really get away from that in general and really create, certainly as artistic leaders, you said there's no playbook for how parents can guide their kids into a professional career. There's no school to teach us how to be artistic directors. There really is ultimately no. I mean, I was very blessed to have on-the-job training for a very long time. After I stopped dancing at the Joffrey, I had 12 years of moving my way up from, artistic staff all the way to associate artistic director. So by the time I took over this job, I was fully prepared, I felt. But not everybody gets that.
Yeah.
And it's really a challenge. Yeah.
yeah, and everyone has an opinion on how you're doing.
Trust me, and I know too.
Very true.
And so we can only just do what we think is the right thing to do and do the best thing. I mean, and I can't say I'm
Absolutely.
always
Okay.
doing the right thing, but I can
I'm
say it's for the right reasons.
so glad this is where we're landing because I have this question, and Brett and I have been churning this for a little while, and this is a ballet help desk thing that we kind of want to float by you. We kind of think that the postgrad level that you guys just kind of have a math problem. You've got lots of postgrad students versus very few jobs. Do you think that ballet is just struggling to message this problem around postgrad? And what do you think you can do at Ballet West or just as a thought leader to change the messaging about what postgrad really is?
Well, I'd love you to start by maybe describing your concept of what postgrad is so that we can be
So-
working from a similar concept.
I'll jump in because my son did HB2 at Houston Ballet, and he went to Houston, and I was pretty naive. I mean, this was only a couple of years ago. He's only been a professional for 2 years, and so he did 2 years in HB2 and then 2 years in a professional position. And when he went to Houston, I just assumed he was going to get a job. That was just kind of what I thought. And he was fortunate. He did get a job, but not everybody coming through postgrad gets a job. And I think that I was extremely naive and lucky that he ended up in a job. But I think there is, because this level has grown so much, it's mathematically impossible for everybody going through postgrad to actually get a paid job with a ballet company. But I think there is this expectation among families that once your kid gets to a certain level, they're going to be employable. And I'm not sure that that is actually true. And so do we need to think about reframing and kind of redefining what postgrad represents? And what Jenny and I have talked about, we've talked about it's kind of like minor league baseball, right? Like most people that play minor league baseball don't make it to the major leagues. Most people who play college sports don't end up as professional athletes. And so is postgrad in ballet more analogous to minor league baseball? Is it more analogous to college sports? Like, how should we be talking about this?
Well, I'm going to again jump in with a few things. First, I'm going to brag for a little bit, which is that we've actually in past years had at least I can count 3 to 4 years of the entire existence of the trainee program where we've had 100% placement from our graduating students.
Right, which is fantastic.
Whether
Yeah.
it's Ballet West 2 or other organizations. And that's because, again, we have a deep, deep commitment to it. So, bragging aside, yes, that is a challenge. And yes, because we've had more years actually where we've not actually been able to place absolutely everybody. But that is always our goal. So, I do think that there has to be an understanding that there are no guarantees for anything that you're going to get. I didn't start dancing because I knew that I was going to get a job. I started dancing because I wanted to get a job and I made it happen. And I was in the right place at the right time. And I was lucky and I was fortunate and I worked my tail off. But that doesn't always work out. So I think you're right when you say, when we look at it like a minor league baseball or, college sports, you can't always assure it. One of the things that I know that we're doing on our end is really trying to cap the size. Why we end up between 25 and 30 is really because it gives them more opportunities to perform as a team and a group. B, there's that much interest. I mean, we turn away a lot of people. If we took everybody, we'd have such a huge program. And then we would be assured for failure of at least a larger percentage of the students. So we don't want that. But yeah, I mean, that is the really tough reality of it. But I can also say on the flip side to this, we here take a great deal of care into it. Last season, we had a dancer at our summer program who very much wanted to be at Ballet West, and I wanted this dancer in, but we only had a trainee position. The dancer was advised by their parent that they had to get a paid job and that they couldn't take the trainee position. The dancer at that late date got a paid job with a small company that paid basically a few $100s per performance, which ended up equaling exactly what they would have gotten had they come as a trainee anyway. The dancer's now been working in this smaller professional company and is trying to come back, but as now saying that they will only accept a main company position because they have now been working as a professional. So the hard thing is also to say you have to get a paid job, but there are also families that are simply just not in a position to be able to help sustain their student if they're in a post-grad situation. So there are a great deal of challenges. I mean, one thing we're working for, we're not there yet, I don't believe, but tell me if I'm wrong here, but our goal is that the trainee will at least at one point be completely tuition free.
Yes.
That is the goal. Along with the paying when they're doing company roles or education and outreach, we also want to eliminate any cost, but that is a longer term goal because we have to be able to raise the funds to sustain that. But that is our ultimate goal because we feel like that post-grad group really should not have to be paying tuition at the very least.
And that is something that we have worked towards. So all of our trainees are in some level of scholarship.
Mm.
So eventually we would love to have them be all fully
100%
scholarship.
fully scholarship.
And that is the goal. But I understand, exactly what you're saying. And it is a frustration. And it's not like the academic world where you're in first grade, then you're in second grade, then you're in third grade, and I deal with that a lot here. And we're trying to train them in the professional training division, the families as well as the students to think, yes, you've done, your professional training division one. That doesn't mean you automatically go to two. There are some of them that we're keeping in one and they're very upset, but it's making the families kind of understand it's not a right, it's a privilege and you're not always ready. And we need to do the best thing for the student. But yeah, it's a big learning curve. So we're trying to help them understand it sooner so that by the time, if they make it to trainee, then they will really understand that the progression. It's all subjective, really, in the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's more because ballet is really interesting in terms of like nobody comes out of like collegiate sports. I don't want to say nobody, but like you don't look at yourself as like a failure. The problem is dancers feel like failures if they don't get that paid company position.
Yeah.
And so this is what we mean by like a messaging problem. I think that people don't quite know how to frame it to feel it successful because being a trainee is still successful. They're still competitive. They're hard to
Yeah.
get. Not everybody gets them. Right?
Exactly.
It is still successful and you still do have the opportunity sometimes to dance in professional roles and all of that stuff. As an industry, are you guys talking about that? Like, I'm not trying to get you to spill tea about positioning ballet, but I'll keep asking a whole bunch of different ways. Like, are you talking about the messaging about these trainee second company programs in terms of messaging them to have dancers feel more successful if they don't move past the trainee level? How are you as an industry talking about it?
It's interesting. I don't think that it's probably talked about as much as it could be, but I mean, that's a very hard thing because most of us who are in this leadership positions have also been dancers ourselves. And most of us have either been very fortunate or have worked very hard to get things or both, which is always usually the case to be able to get to where we've gotten because I never lose sight of the fact that I've been blessed to be able to get as far as I've gotten. But I was told by my parents, all four of them academics, former professors and leaders at the University of California, Berkeley, by the way, so not too far away
Go
from
Bears.
that I had a few years to see if I could make it as an artist, as a ballet dancer. And that's why I said I was fortunate that I did, because that kind of challenge. I mean, when I said I was going to become a professional ballet dancer, they said, no, you're not. And it was, again, not because they had anything wrong with me dancing or ballet. They loved the art form. They were the ones that taken me to see it since I was a kid. But they just didn't think that that was going to be a reasonable thing for me to do. And it wasn't what they envisioned me doing. I don't know if it's only just the industry that's placing the pressure on it. I think that it kind of is this concept that if you're going to be going into a unique art form that is a performing art that if you don't get a paid job for it, that then obviously that you haven't succeeded. So because I do know that a lot of times we're dealing more with the pressures that their families have put on them to get a professional job, where we're looking at this as, look, we've loved having you as a trainee, and certainly, called this place and that place. I've set up auditions for you here and there, beyond that, we can't. And I've actually heard literally, my parents then don't want me to dance anymore if I don't get a professional job right now.
Yeah.
And I say, is it a financial thing? And sometimes it very much really is. And that, I get that because it's expensive. Sometimes it's not. So I think certainly I would agree that the industry itself, we could be finding a different way to message. But I think also parents have to understand that if they're raising someone who is going into the arts is a very different, endeavor. And as such, there are fewer jobs than there are artists in this world.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing because I do think that conversations like these with people like you are helpful for parents to process and understand because parents are
But
kind of
think about
like,
it, becoming a trainee, as you yourself you both said, becoming a trainee with an elite ballet company in the United States is a huge accomplishment in and of itself. And even if it
absolutely.
doesn't become like a full-time professional dancer,
They
that's still
attain
something
that high level,
they should
and
be
they should
very
be
proud of
proud.
and consider themselves a success.
Yeah.
There are so many great painters in this world, and how many of them sell their paintings and make a living selling their paintings? Are they failures because they don't sell their paintings?
Well, okay then. So this is kind of where we have the trickier parts of the conversation, right? And I'm sure this is the hardest parts of your job is we hear dancers who just need more training a lot, right? Is there a point when a school tells a family that this might not be the right path for their dancer instead of maybe telling them to come back for another year? Do you have those and I understand that that's hard to tell someone
is
like
hard.
when the dream is the dream is over, but how do you have that conversation of like, you can keep pursuing this, but not here?
Yeah, we do have that conversation with some of our professional training division students, and we think, well, maybe this isn't where your path is going to lead you. You've been working really hard, but perhaps it's time that you find a college that has a nice dance program and you can start your future there and still enjoy the art form.
You do
And it
have
is
that
a hard
conversation.
conversation, and sometimes they don't hear it. Sometimes they don't hear what you're saying, and sometimes, it's very hard to accept. But we try to be honest with them because in the long run, it will help them to know that sooner.
At that point, if you're having that kind of difficult conversation, do you loop the parent in as well?
Yeah, always, always. Yeah, when we have the more difficult conversations, it tends to be like toward the end of the year when they've seen their exams and they're not moving forward, and we sit down with their parents and with them and we talk about it. And we say, okay, this is where you are, but this is the best thing for you at this time.
And you can see the conversation as the spring approaches. The conversation is who's getting promoted, who's not getting asked back, all of those things. At your trainee and second company level, I'm sure, it reaches a fever pitch around when contract renewals are going out for Ballet West main company and all of that. Are you sending signals to students earlier, both positively and not so positively, so that people can plan? Because one of the things we hear from parents a lot is it hit him out of the blue. He didn't see it coming, right? That he had no idea he wasn't getting promoted or he wasn't being asked back.
We
So,
definitely, I mean, I know at my end, and when I speak a lot with our trainee manager, about communicating with, because I spend so much time really watching them at that level, I will be very clear. And in fact, I will often say if I am confident about this, when most of the time I would never say it if I didn't feel confident about it. Let me say, I will say, you are the next in line. There are two people in front of you. There are actually four people in front of you. I like you very much, but let's just look at the averages of what we might have or might not have. And so you may want to start considering other options. Now, that's only if I feel confident about those individuals. None of the trainees, though, because remember, I've handpicked all of the trainees, are dancers that I think I would ever say to them, this is not going to be the profession for you. This is,
mhm.
I have the luxury at that level of not having to say that. Evelyn has a much more challenging job of having to speak with parents about questioning whether they should even pursue ballet. My place, the most I would say is Ballet West is not the place for you, and let me help you find another place. And then with Christy, we say, start putting together a list of places that you're interested in. And I know most of those directors. I will call on behalf or write an email on the behalf or something like that. And yes, if it's clear early on, let's say within the second year of a 2-year training program, that it's not likely that they're going to get in, we start sending those signals. We do our best. Now, most students I have experienced are very rational about that. They get it. They become very strategic, very, very strategic about that. And in fact, I now have students who've come and said, I love it here, but I realize I have two people ahead of me. What should I do? And in fact, I had one young man actually say to me, could I stay one more year? Because I do love it here. What are my chances at that point? And I said, yes. And that young man is getting into the company this year. He doesn't know it yet, but it's because I know that I have a leading dancer who will be retiring mid-season. And he said, I know that I have two people ahead of me. And I said,
Yeah.
come back for a third year with Ballet West 2. And
Fantastic.
so
Yeah.
when we can, we try to do that. That said, there are still times where we feel like we've sent very clear signals, and we've had students who said, I was completely blindsided and I had.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we can only do from our end what we think we can do in their best interests.
Sure. So what do you think, on in that vein, what do you think are some of the conversations around this postgrad level? Adam, you said you don't think we're talking about it enough. What are some of the conversations you think that the industry should be having around postgrad that are not being had right now?
It's interesting. I guess if you ask me, I think we brought it up in this one, and that's sort of a little light bulb went off, was the idea that they are a success having gone as far as they've gone, and trying to build that mindset a little bit more, that there is no shame in just being a trainee at an elite organization, and that obviously they're all working for the ultimate goal of getting a professional contract.
Mhm.
And that's what we're working for them too. But the law of averages is actually, I think, perhaps also, as I'm speaking, it's sort of forming in my head, the idea of actually creating more industry wide the way that I work with the people that I'm confident with, in terms of knowing if I have one person, it's going to go to this person. If I have two places, it's going to go to those two, et cetera, et cetera. I actually think that at the very least, that puts it in context. They can then start understanding their odds and start making wise decisions, and perhaps in a way that develops more agency for themselves as young pre-professionals and young adults in how they're managing their own careers.
Actually love that because I mean, I know like when my son was in HB2, it was pretty obvious who was going to get the offers.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But until it is in ink and in front of you, you really don't know.
Because
And
they don't want to believe it, right? Because
right,
everybody
right.
wants that goal that they've been working so hard toward, but it is, sometimes unrealistic. And so I think Adam
Yeah.
does a spectacular job on trying to set them up to kind of know where they are so that they can make intelligent decisions on their future.
Yeah, and as early as possible because you hear stories all the time about like they waited around to see if they were getting an offer and it was March or April. And even though the schools say, get your audition materials together, get them out, there are a whole host of reasons that doesn't always happen, not the least of which is if they are understudying with the main company, they can't get a way to do auditions. And so there's this whole mess in, January, February, March, where dancers are trying to balance, am I going to get an offer from the main company where I am now? Or do I need to go audition? And how do I go audition when I'm,
Well, and it's
fairy
interesting
number
to say
4?
that one thing that I've really wanted to develop here is completely steal something that Pacific Northwest Ballet does in Seattle, which is it actually has a program that brings us as artistic directors in to see those kids,
Yes.
Yeah.
which is the other way around. And I will often come during performance time when those kids are performing. I will watch them in class or even teach them in class. And then I will watch them in company performances. And I will speak to Peter, the artistic director there, and he'll say,
Mhm.
that person, I'm probably going to take that person for will be looked at closely for a new job. And I would love to see us all be able to develop that. But that comes from a very special financial grant that they have to do that. That said, even when school or company doesn't have the money to do that, I've often, because I have some travel budget to do, I will often try and dovetail as much of that in my opportunities to see students at different schools and watch their progress from different levels and talk to the school directors and the company directors about their own interest in this person. So I've often said, look, if you're not interested in that dancer, I would love that dancer, and let you know if and when I have an opening, and let's stay in contact. So, I mean, I think that we could start working, and that's where starting to break down those silos, as you had said, Jenny, really can start to help because, it really creates a more global community in a way that creates more opportunities for more young dancers.
Absolutely. And, just like thinking about auditions in interesting ways, places are starting to create systems to make it more successful for dancers because the time and money is just so hard, right? I mean,
That's
I
exactly
know.
right. That
Yes.
we all that's something I want to
Yes.
assure everybody. We all recognize that.
Yeah.
And those are conversations that we're all having is how can we create greater ways to make it, to facilitate auditions for students so they don't have to lay out so much money, so they don't have to spend so much on printed material or video work or all these other things, and see.
yeah. I mean, I love the idea. If you guys really do come up with something that's a lot more standardized, we'd love for you guys to come back on and talk about it and really
That's
let
the hope.
everybody
I mean,
know
it's in the
and
process.
launch
That'd
it.
It's
be
a serious
wonderful.
discussion.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that that's really exciting, and we are happy to facilitate that in any possible way because anything that can make things more streamlined and more successful for students.
Yes.
Okay, let's just like for a second. How many audition videos did you get this year for postgrad? And then of them, how many did you actually watch?
We got a lot. We got a lot. And truthfully, we take maybe 4, because first of all, it works so much better when we see them in person.
Well, because we also take a bunch from auditions, but we also like to take a bunch from our summer intensive because we've worked with them firsthand. And that always is another big challenge because it's so late in the season as well. So it's hard for kids to keep their calendars open in that way.
Mm-hmm.
We get so many second company and company auditions that my assistant actually engages an intern from the University of Utah's ballet department to help organize all of them before they get screened by artistic staff before they are sent to me. And because we get hundreds. And a lot of them, most of them are more at the trainee level, in my opinion, than at the company level. And subsequently, that's why then I will send those down to Evelyn or to Christy Wyndham, who is our training manager, to review. and say, this is actually someone you might want to look at, or that sort of thing. So we really do try, but hundreds.
I actually have two questions. First, Adam, you're getting main company audition videos where you think the dancer is a better fit as a trainee. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay.
Yes.
Despite the fact that the dancer thinks they are company ready.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and kind of a problem, honestly. Like there's a disconnect if the dancer thinks they are company ready and then, you're saying, no, actually, they're more of a trainee level. Like that feels to me like a disconnect somewhere in the industry.
I'll be very honest. I'm going to be blunt about that. I see that disconnect a great deal. Company class auditions where people come privately as opposed to an open call audition have to come with a recommendation from a teacher or director that I know, or coming from another professional situation to this. That's when I allow it. And I would say, certainly not when they're coming from one professional situation to another, but if they've come from a recommendation of either a pre-professional or trainee director or something for a company class audition, the majority of them are not at a level that are appropriate for Ballet West. The majority, even not about even whether I have a space. And I'm being very blunt about that. So
Yeah.
what I suspect happens is that, let's say it's coming from a trainee situation or a second company situation of another company, those are the dancers that the director of that company is not interested in for their company, and subsequently is doing the same thing that I'm trying to do also. Now, all I can say from my end is that when I'm sending out letters of recommendation for people, I won't do that if I think it's not the right fit.
Mm-hmm.
I can't promise it's going to be the right fit. I'm not going to tell a director what to do. That's their business, what that person wants to hire or not hire. But I won't send a dancer we're a dancer company that generally tends towards taller. I will not deny that. Doesn't mean we only have tall dancers. That's a fallacy. People think we're only tall here. We have plenty of short dancers, but we trend taller. I would not send one of my tallest dancers to a company that I know trends shorter. That would be wrong of me, because that would be setting that person up for failure, in my opinion. I have plenty of women in my company who are between 5'7" and 6 feet. I know other directors who don't have women who are up over 5'7". They're between 5'4" and 5'7". I wouldn't send a 6-foot woman to that company. That's kind of what I mean by that. It's I try and find the right fit for a person. So hopefully more directors are doing that's something that we can do to help within the industry to make sure that these kids are set up for a success in that capacity.
No, I think that's good.
If you had one piece of advice for a 17-year-old who is about to enter kind of this postgrad landscape right now, given the current climate, what would it be?
It would be to really adhere to that dream that you have, dig in 150, pick a place that, has dancers that look like you, have the rep that you want to dance, has, all the setup of a place where you would really like to go and be successful, and then dig in be committed to it over 100%. Listen to everything that the instructors are saying, look at the other dancers, play well with others, and, dance your best. And every day, take it as an opportunity to do something spectacular in your work.
I've given this piece of advice. It's very similar. There are no guarantees in this world. So if you really want something, commit yourself to it. Give yourself 1,000% to it. I think that there might be a difference between disappointment and regret. And I think we can all live with disappointment if we don't get something that we've gone for. But if we never go for something that we want, then we're going to regret it perhaps our entire life. And art is such a subjective thing. It is such a difficult thing. There are more dancers in this world than there are professional jobs. But if it's something that you're really passionate about and you really love, you need to try it. You need to try and give yourself of it. Be wise about it, as Evelyn said. Look for the places that you think you would fit in the best, because we all have different aesthetics, even within the overall aesthetic of ballet, and see if that's the right fit and really go for it, knowing that it may not work out, but feel proud that you went for something and honored that you've been able to be a part of this very unique and special art form.
That's a beautiful place to leave it. Thank you both so much for joining us. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it.
If you're enjoying the Ballet Help Desk podcast, please take a moment and subscribe, rate, and drop us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And while you're at it, don't forget to swipe that auto download button so you never miss an episode. Thanks so much for your support. Until next time, the Help Desk is now closed.